IU fans, we made it. We made it through the regular season. All right. Look,
I didn't think I was gonna make it.
it had its ups and downs. It was a winding journey. It was a real roller coaster. But with that said, Indiana has put themselves in a place where they're in the NCAA tournament. They are going to be, at worst, it seems like a 5 seed in March Madness. And now Indiana goes into the Big Ten tournament without too much stress on their shoulders. Now, of course, there's a big carrot at the end of the stick. IU has never won the Big Ten tournament. You obviously want to play your best basketball going into March Madness, but we get some time to sit back and soak in what we saw over the course of the last few months. Indiana has a double bye for the first time since 2016. We're going to recap a crazy senior night win, preview the Hoosiers in the Big Ten tournament, and so much more here on episode 288 of the Hoosiers Sound, where we're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We bring you this episode of the Hoosier Sound on Monday, March 6th, 2023, where I'm your host, Nathan Christian. Here with me tonight are my normal co-hosts, Matt Lukens and Charlie Mason. Charlie, you were there in person at that crazy senior night game yesterday. Indiana got out to a great start, took a double-digit lead. Michigan came back and took a double-digit lead. The game went to overtime and it came down to the final second. What were your one or two main takeaways from IU knocking off Michigan in overtime on Sunday night?
Well, I'm going to say it, and Trayce Jackson-Davis said it in the post game in the media room. This was the most perfect representation of Indiana's season in one game. It was an emotional roller coaster for people watching, but more importantly for the players. This is one of the only games in the past couple that we've seen Mike Woodson rotate the way that he did. We saw a lot of people come off the bench and perform, which we haven't seen in a couple games, which was good. It was good to see if you're an IU fan going into the Big Ten tournament. It's nice to see Tamar Bates hit the most clutch shot of his career against Michigan when IU needed it most. It was also nice to see Miller Kopp with little confidence being a game changer down the stretch. And it was incredible to watch Trayce Thompson, who came out of nowhere, out the floodgates, playing out of his mind. I've never seen Trayce Thompson play with this confidence or intensity, is I think the word I tweeted out. This intensity. He talked about it in the post-game press conference, how when he got the ball and scored for the first time that night, he looked at coach and said, "I'm going to keep scoring." And he did. And even though down the line he couldn't hit his free throws, he made some clutch plays to get IU in the position that they ended up being at the end of the game, which was victory. So,
yeah, it was Trayce Thompson's it's his most points in a game since Elon in late December, his first double-digit rebounding game since Kennesaw State at the end of December. He was key to IU's win. Trayce Jackson-Davis was awesome with 27 points. 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, business as usual for my Big Ten Player of the Year. Matt, look, Indiana had a lot of twists and turns in that game, but at the end of the day, they were able to pull it off. I mean, what did you see? Race was big. Tamar Bates was key. Michigan needed that game, and Indiana came away with the win.
Michigan absolutely needed that game. Nathan and I were in a heated playback room watching the game, which made it even more intense, I think, because, again, Michigan desperately needed to win one of those games that they both lost. Michigan lost 2 1-possession games, or two. I guess the Illinois game was a 2-possession game at the end because of some free throws, but two extremely close games on the overtime games last week to basically kick them out of the tournament. Unless they go on into the championship game of the Big Ten tournament this week, which we will talk about the Big Ten tournament here in a bit. But I'm not going to lie to you. Seeing Tamar Bates getting plaudits for this game makes sense when you look at the box score. And you remember the 2 big shots at the end. But my God, Tamar and Miller Kopp were trying to lose that game for about 35 minutes. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Miller just was a no-show. I mean, Jet Howard was guarding him, which should just be automatically 10 points to the other team because Jet just doesn't play defense for Michigan. And then Tamar, just so many dumb, just young basketball decisions. Like they're not bad necessarily, but in the context of him taking it and also be like either time and clock or depending on game clock management or whatever it was, like for the little like minute details, they were bad decisions all around. Or he just didn't clutch it up. So for instance, that putback, he definitely should have just laid up with his right hand and try to do something funky with it and didn't work, or a pull-up turnaround 2-pointer fading away bank shot that he took with like 14 seconds left on the shot clock. Just Tamar based decisions. And then he hits 2 big ones, right? In the final 5 minutes, and plays, by the way, excellent defense on somebody, Kobe Buffkin, who's probably Michigan's best player.
Definitely. I don't think there's an argument. And just one person's opinion. I think Buffkin is Michigan's best player.
Maybe it's him or Hunter Dickinson, and Buffkin at the very least is their biggest game changer. At the very least, he's the guy that moves the needle for them if they're going to win the game. And he was cooking for the first 35 minutes of that game, and Tamar took it personal.
It was his assignment.
Yeah, and took it personal and played great defense down the end. So I can see why you would vote for Tamar for the most impactful player in that game. But I think my hat has to go in the ring for Trayce Thompson. Senior night, he shows up as a guy who has underperformed all year long. As stats wise, I thought he's probably played some of his better basketball just from a team perspective this year, even while being hurt. Yeah. And he shows up on senior night and puts on a show. Yep. I thought he was Indiana's clear second best player. I didn't think Jalen Hood-Schifino had his best game, even though he had some clutch shots at the end too.
Huge 3 at the end.
Huge 3
in regulation.
He needed all of those points, right? But I think Trayce almost played himself off the list by missing 4 free throws at the end. But he also came up with multiple defensive plays to create those free throws. Sure. So at the end of the day, you kind of just, it is what it is. But I mean, look, that finally we have a healthy Trayce Thompson. I'm not saying that just because he had a good game, but I'm saying that because he looked proactive instead of reactive. And he's looked reactive for much of the year, basically due to his own physical ailments. Yeah. And this break for the Big Ten and getting that extra day of rest cannot come at a better time for this team. Beating Michigan, getting the 3rd seed. I would have liked the 2nd seed, but Rutgers can't do anything well for the conference ever. IU getting that extra day of rest is so vitally important to this team. It really is
massive.
This is a team that looked gassed, and Charlie pointed out this is the first time you've seen Mike Woodson rotate the way in which he did this game, and that has to be almost entirely due to the fact that this team is gassed, right? Trayce Jackson-Davis has been playing 40 minutes a game for 20 Big Ten games, right? Basically,
yeah, and he played 44 yesterday.
Like this team needs a break, needs a vacation. All right, it's March, it's winning time, but it's also, the end of the season. Everybody's injured. Everybody has a stubbed toe. It's like everybody's playing at 95% at best, and the Hoosiers are playing probably well below that, given the fact that all of them have been playing heavy minutes, especially Trayce and Jalen Hood-Schifino. So it was no surprise to me that Jalen Hood-Schifino had not a great game. In back-to-back games against Iowa and Michigan at home. And yet the Hoosiers still found a way to beat a team that was absolutely desperate to win that game. And that's got to be props to one, Trayce Thompson for stepping up and filling that hole, and 2, Mike Woodson for getting this team ready, especially after him not really getting the team ready against Iowa.
Well, and he used some bad words after that Iowa game. And you had a feeling Indiana would be more prepared, more ready to go, and you saw IU get off to a good start. I'm going to focus more on Tamar Bates' defense. I know he's the most polarizing player we've seen at Indiana since probably Devontae Green. I definitely don't think anyone more recent than that. I'm going to focus on the defense here. Kobe Buffkin didn't hit a shot over the last 16 minutes of the game, and Bates that was the primary assignment. He was closing out and he was making Buffkin uncomfortable. And when you have a game like this one where Trey Galloway gets into foul trouble, or Jalen Hood-Schifino gets into foul trouble, it's clear the next man up is Tamar Bates. We don't have Xavier Johnson anymore. That's not in discussion. Tamar Bates is the next man up. If one of these guards get into foul trouble, Bates will get pushed up to 20 plus minutes, and Indiana's going to have to rely on him to either make some shots or play some good defense. That's just the way it's going to be with Tamar Bates. I love the way Race Thompson played, and I thought it was so fitting that in a game where Michigan had their back against the wall, Michigan was desperate to get a win for the NCAA tournament. It was Trayce Jackson-Davis and Race Thompson who led Indiana to sort of a culture win. I mean, it's just kind of a culture win for IU, where Michigan had a double-digit lead with 9 minutes and change left, and it was the two seniors who were bullied by Michigan early in their career. Michigan won 9 in a row against Indiana, the last 8 of which came by double digits. That ended, of course, last year in the Big Ten tournament. Indiana needed Trayce and Race, the two guys that Michigan owned, the two guys in the program under Archie Miller, where Indiana was wrecked by the Michigan Wolverines. And it was those two players that really stepped up and elevated their game and made key shots and grabbed big rebounds. You know, the shoe was on the other foot last year in the Big Ten tournament. Indiana had their back against the wall. And Michigan could have ended IU season as long as they held on to a massive lead against the Hoosiers in the Big Ten tournament. And Indiana fought back, and they won that game. And they beat Illinois, and they almost beat Iowa, and they made the NCAA tournament. They carried that momentum into the offseason. Malik Renew committed to Indiana after the season ended. Who knows where Renew would have gone, and if Indiana ended up in the NIT. Look, Michigan.
Georgia. Sweet Georgia.
And Michigan needed that yesterday. And they had a double-digit lead with 9:15 to go. And Indiana, especially Trayce and Race, said, no, it's not happening tonight. You will not win this game, and you will be forced to win the Big Ten tournament and at least make the final of the Big Ten tournament to make March Madness. And I look back, and I see not even 2 years ago, Mike Woodson was with the Knicks, and Archie Miller was at Indiana. And over the time since, Woodson has established a culture of winning and doing what it takes to increase that level of competition and intensity. It's not always perfect. It's not always sexy. Okay, you can look back at Tuesday night. You can look back at the Michigan State game in East Lansing. Obviously, the bumps and the bruises Indiana hit in early January, but the level of intensity, the level of preparation and focus and doing what it takes to win in a year where you had injuries and you had a really tough Big Ten schedule, I'm tipping my cap to Mike Woodson. I thought that was a really big culture win for IU. IU didn't need that game. Obviously, senior night, you would have liked to get a win. No question about it. Michigan needed that game. And Michigan held a big lead, and Indiana fought back to get a win. It was nerve-wracking. You know, Race Thompson, I would have liked to see those free throws. But, you know, Charlie, I'm going to ask you this. You know, when you look at the 75-73 win for Indiana on Sunday, were you more impressed by Indiana's offensive execution through Trayce and Race, or did you like the improvements they made on the defensive end after a horrible showing against Iowa?
Well, I think that it was a mixture of both, honestly, that I liked. I appreciated how quickly IU got out to that offensive burst in the first 5, 10, 15 minutes. But like, there's both sides of the story for both the offense and the defensive effort. Both wavered, especially right before that second half. I don't know what I didn't know what I was watching. It was so hard to watch. There was no defense, and there was no offense. And that kind of bled into the beginning of the second half. I think they went on. I think they went on like a 15-14-2 run or something like that. From first half to second half. It was just tough to watch, but I think I appreciated the defensive effort in the second half of the second half. Just being able to close out the game. And obviously, Michigan wasn't hitting their shots. They took a couple, they just didn't fall like they were in the first half. But I think that credit goes to IU's defense for really locking it down. That was one of the things that was the focus of the tweets. It wasn't, oh my gosh, like TJD had a huge poster. It was, oh my gosh, like there's this lockdown defense on the floor. The communication's incredible. You're playing a high man to man, and nobody's penetrating the post. It was incredible to watch. So
Yeah, there were ebbs and flows to both sides of the court. Matt, Indiana's had some crazy swings in each of their games recently, except for the Iowa one. At Purdue was a bad start, big second half. At Michigan State was a good start and a bad second half. Is there any way Indiana's going to get a consistent 40 minutes, or is this who they are and you just ride the roller coaster?
College basketball is a game of runs. Okay. And Indiana lives and dies by those runs, whether you like it or not. I think Michigan had a 33-9 run in the middle of that game.
It sounds about right. Yeah, it was crazy.
IU survived that and ended up winning by 4. Okay, so
by two.
By two. I ended up winning by 2. Should have won by 4 if Race Thompson makes his damn free throws, but won by 2, right? That's impressive. What's more impressive to me about that game, though, is Indiana didn't play well, still won. Yeah. Michigan is a tournament team that doesn't have a tournament resume. I think Ant brought that up last night.
Ant Wright.
Ant Wright. Shut up, Ant Wright. Brought that up to me. They have every makings of a tournament team. They have 2 NBA guys on the team, plus Hunter Dickinson. They have wings, they have shooters, they have young guards.
Lottery pick.
They have lottery pick. They might have 2, honestly, depending on Kobe Buffkin's workouts. And they're not going to make the tournament, right? Because they have a loss at home to Central Michigan, and they have a loss. Well, they couldn't clutch up close games.
Yeah, they can't.
Indiana was part of them not clutching up 2 close games. Yeah. And Ann Arbor, and then here, Indiana beat them and swept them. A Michigan team that in the last 10 years Indiana struggled against.
Just horrible.
And we're sitting here on March the 6th talking about how Michigan's not going to make the tournament and Indiana's going to be a 4 seed, right? Yeah. And so again, Indiana can sit there and you can nitpick all you want and talk about them not playing a 40-minute game. Trust me, it's frustrating. I was losing my mind yesterday. But
you weren't the only one, I promise.
I know. You were muting to stop yourself from saying things. And I'm sure most people, across Hoosier Nation were doing the same thing.
The mentions were incredible. There's no question.
Yeah, exactly. I can say that people were upset after Indiana blows like a 14-point lead.
Yeah.
At half, right? And it's a 1-possession game. Like that should never have been the case. This team is never going to put 40 minutes together. But in a year in college basketball where everybody is extremely mid, you don't have to put 40 minutes.
That's how I see it.
You don't have to put 40 minutes together. You got to put a 5-minute run at the end of the game to close it out. You can be down 15. You can ask Iowa. You can be down 13 with a minute and a half left, and you can still win a game. That's this year in college basketball. There is not one super good team. People will try to tell you it's Houston.
I don't buy it.
I'm not quite sure.
I don't buy
it. They'll try to tell you it's Purdue. We've seen how that turns out. They'll try to tell you it's Arizona, and they look pretty good against IU, and then they go and lose to Utah.
UCLA,
college basketball.
Kansas.
UCLA plays crappy basketball. Kansas doesn't play anybody over 6'6". It's all about matchups this year in March. Really, seriously, it is. And for instance, IU could lose in the Big Ten tournament because they play Maryland, and I think Maryland's a terrible matchup for IU. And then they can go and beat somebody like Houston. They could go beat somebody like a Tennessee in the tournament that's a higher seed than IU. And they could go to an Elite Eight, a Sweet 16. That's not impossible, right? Because in college basketball this year, anybody can beat anybody. Quite literally, go and look at Michigan. They lost to Central Michigan at home. That's 330th
Yeah,
in Ken Palm, Central Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay. It might be 230 or 330. Either way, it's terrible.
It's
awful.
330. You were
It's
right.
330. Yeah. So 330 in Ken Palm, Central Michigan at home. And that's a team that should be in the tournament, by the way. They should be. You know, they won't be because they haven't won the games they needed to this year, but on a talent perspective and the way they've been playing over the last couple of weeks, they're a tournament team or a tournament-esque team, right? You go and look at Wisconsin and Rutgers and the way they've been playing. It's like college basketball this year is I'll say it from one last time, is extremely mid. It'll make for a fantastic March, by the way.
Yes.
So tune in and watch. And IU could go from losing the first game of the tournament to being in the Final Four.
I agree.
Nothing would surprise me.
Nothing would surprise me either. One thing I know for certain is that Indiana will not be intimidated by any team that they face. It could be as early as the Purdue matchup in the Big Ten tournament. If that's what ends up coming, Indiana, why would they be intimidated? They've beaten them twice. Then you have March Madness, where I don't think there's anyone. Houston, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, it doesn't matter. I don't think there's a one seed out there that Indiana is going to be afraid of. They're going to like their chances no matter what. It would have been great to have Xavier Johnson in the fold to spell some of the minutes in the rotation. But unfortunately, Xavier was unavailable, and he didn't go through senior night ceremonies. The news is that Indiana is going to take the steps required to submit a medical waiver to try to get him back onto the roster next season. It's going to be a close call. You can dig into the details by Googling them. It's going to be a close call. We'll see how this goes. The NCAA has become a little more lenient recently as far as handing out the waivers. Worst case scenario, Johnson goes pro next year. I would like to see him back in an IU uniform. I think Indiana's got a case, even if it doesn't pertain strictly to the letter of the law. Charlie, even though Xavier Johnson didn't speak, senior night was awesome. I was able to take a look at the speeches as they went through, the post-game ceremonies. I thought Mike Woodson gave an outstanding speech. Trayce Jackson-Davis had some great words as well. You were there in person. What was the vibe like in Assembly Hall as the players were speaking after the game? And were there any comments or quotes or words that stood out to you from anyone that spoke on that post-game speeches yesterday?
I'll say this. It was a lot funnier than I expected it to be. The first thing,
helps when you win. It helps when you win.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Way less depressing.
It would have been awkward otherwise. They played a special presentation on the big screen, and it was pretty special to watch because they cut in between like the special presentation and they showed like the guys watching the special presentation. It was like people tearing up in the crowd, a big round of applause. It was emotional at first, and then during player introductions, the guys were being a little goofy with it. There was a moment when Miller Kopp like looked directly, like found the camera, like looked directly into it and like made like his classic face with his tongue out, and everybody started laughing and cheering. No, but it was incredible to watch Mike Woodson talk about the players that now that we watch on the court as more than just basketball players, as people, as men, as leaders in their communities. And I think it was really special that he was able to stand up in front of everybody and kind of make them feel the same way that he felt about the guys, to show how close they are. He thanked the families of all the seniors and then made it clear that the dedication that they were putting in over these past 4 years or however many years they've been with IU.
For some, yeah. More than 4 for some of those players.
Yeah, more than 4 for a couple. He made a couple jokes about race. Yeah, they were definitely words of encouragement. And it was kind of funny. There was a moment where he asked Trayce to come back for another year, and a moment where he asked Race how many years he'd been in the program. So it's just kind of that banter that really shows the relationship between all the seniors, the coaching staff. So yeah, it was really special. They made sure to thank the seniors in the band, which was important. The cheerleaders. They shouted out the student section seniors too. So everybody kind of had their moment. It was really special.
Yeah, and you think about the senior class specifically, whether it's players or coaches, players or fans or band members or whoever. This is a senior class that went through the pandemic, a senior class that's gone through a coaching change at Indiana. Those are very rare. And transition from Archie Miller to Mike Woodson has gone more smoothly than I expected, in all honesty. So it was nice to hear Woodson and Jackson-Davis, as well as the rest of the seniors, speak. Woodson made it fairly clear his intention. And I know this doesn't surprise most of you, but the way he said it was very clear, very obvious. His intention is to go to this Big Ten tournament and win the freaking thing. Indiana's not done it ever. And so Woodson is ready to roll here Friday, Saturday, Sunday, do whatever it takes to get Indiana to the mountaintop here. Of course, that first matchup likely against Maryland, potentially against Nebraska or Minnesota. We'll talk about the Big Ten tournament a little later on tonight. But overall, great vibes during the senior night ceremonies. Obviously, it helps that Indiana grabs the win before they take the mic and speak to the crowd that was there. So overall, good night for Indiana. They got the win. Senior night went smoothly. The Hoosiers now head into the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament, knowing exactly what is at stake going forward. We have plenty more to talk about. Stay tuned. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU Sports. And we're going to actually dig back to the throwback Indiana Hoosier football program and give a shout out to Cody Latimer. Why would you say Cody Latimer is getting a shout out here on Who Won the Week this past week in IU Sports? Latimer's actually taken the XFL by storm, and it's funny to see him registered not as a wide receiver, but as a tight end in that league. It's just got underway last week. He's really made an impression. Of course, many of you may not be fully tuned in to that league, maybe a little bit of a Super Bowl football fix that you took care of early in February, maybe taking a step back, focus more on basketball. But hey, former Hoosier that really took the field by storm during the Big Ten when he was at IU. He's transitioned to tight end in the XFL. He's doing really big things so far through 2 weeks. Obviously, we saw Cam Jones really shine at the NFL Combine out of the linebacker position. It'll be interesting to see where he sorts himself out in the mix. Indiana football's got their pro day coming up on Tuesday this week. Looking forward to seeing the number of different Hoosiers shine in that environment. Tywan Mullen, I think, is a name that hasn't gotten too much recognition thus far in the process. I'm looking forward to seeing him have a good day during IU's pro day this week and rise up as far as how he's considered across the NFL. Obviously, a lot of other big news. IU's wrestling team went through the Big Ten championships. Indiana baseball and softball keeps things going. We're your one-stop shop for all that coverage here at Indiana HQ. A friendly reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans, such as yourself. There's still a little bit more to talk about coming out of Indiana's game on Sunday, going into the Big Ten tournament. And I said it a moment ago, Matt, Tamar Bates is the most polarizing player on this basketball team. And we saw him yesterday go out and play 23 minutes. He led Indiana at plus 11. Some crazy shot selection, but he drilled 2 threes, a little bit of a defensive lapse early in his minutes in the first half, but he bounced back in the second half. There is no Xavier Johnson. And so as you look at Tamar Bates, Matt, what are you looking for? What's the best case scenario for Tamar Bates the rest of this season? And what's a worst case scenario for Bates from now until the end of the NCAA tournament?
Well, best case scenario would be for him to play just like he did for the last 10 minutes of the game yesterday, right? And you play the last quarter of the game like you did against Michigan. You're not forcing things. You're taking what comes to you. You're playing smart on defense. You're not forcing anything, right? I think for him, it's about forcing stuff because he doesn't get minutes, right? And he wants to get the minutes. And so he just tries so hard to make something happen. So he'd be like, see, I should be getting minutes. See, you need to play me more. And it works for some players, right? And you can ask Devontae Green. He would tell you that works. I'm sure of it. He would tell you that works. But I think for Tamar, right, he's playing a role where he comes off the bench, and he replaces either Trey Galloway, who's in foul trouble, or Miller Kopp needs a breather. We don't need a world beater for that position, right? But we need somebody that can be a threat. And he can be a threat. He just needs to not be threatening to his own team, right? And there's sometimes where he makes plays that just make me want to put my head through my desk. And he's going to, guess what? He's still going to do that, right? Even if he plays 20 minutes a game from here on out, right? He's still going to do these things that make you go, Tamar, why? Why did you blow that way up? Why are you taking a mid-range jump shot 1 foot on the line with 25 seconds left on the shot clock? Why? But you know what? You're not going to question why if he makes it.
Yeah.
And if he does too many of those, Woodson will sit him, right? And won't play him. And he's shown that he has that leash, right? But I think now with March, you need a game changer. And Tamar Bates, for better or worse, is a game changer, right? And he's a run maker. He's a run stopper. He's a run igniter for the other team. But Indiana kind of needs somebody that's going to be volatile because you have guys in Miller Kopp who you know what you're supposed to get out of them to play like that on Sheeran, right? But you know what you're supposed to get out of Miller Kopp, right? Percentage wise and what he's done all year long, right? He's just going to take 3-pointers. He's not going to force anything. He's going to play mediocre defense and he's going to try his butt off, right? He's going to be the first person on the floor. And I respect that. You know what you're going to get out of Trey Galloway, right? He's going to be the playmaker, right? He can hit some shots some days, but that's not his job. You know, if he does, that's great. If he doesn't, that's also fine. Like, not gonna be mad at him.
Right.
And he's gonna hustle his butt off on defense.
Yeah.
You know what you're gonna get out of Trayce Thompson, right? And you kind of can guess what you're gonna get out of Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trayce. But you need somebody that can come in and be that guy, that spark plug that can just ignite, you know, a 20-5 run for Indiana. A guy that can give you 5 or 10 off the bench. Renew's not gonna be that guy. Right?
No,
you go up and down the roster, right? These guys are not going to be that guy. Tamar is the only guy on the roster that can come off the bench and give you 10, right?
Yeah.
On 3 shots, right? And he's a guy that can also give you a defensive presence on the wing if he's just locked in and not pressing too much. And you're going to need that if Indiana plays Maryland in the tournament. So Tamar needs to get more playing time, as much as it hurts me to say.
I'm ready for it. I'm not kidding.
And I hope that this Michigan game. So I thought we ignited something with that Michigan State game, but I'm really hoping that he can take something from this Michigan game, that he doesn't need to be on fire to play. He just needs to play within the offense and just try to not force things. As long as if he feels that it's his shot, I'm okay with that. But he doesn't need to force it, right? And I think he's going to learn that, hopefully, down the stretch here. And that'll open things up, by the way, for this team next year. Because if Tamar can become a consistent presence on this team, that'll clear up a lot of questions about the roster next year.
Absolutely. And I'm ready to ride the wave. I'm ready to take that Michigan game from yesterday. And frankly, I thought yesterday changed the direction that you take with Tamar Bates. I was not expecting him to be that much of a factor, especially on defense in 20 plus minutes. And the offense, look, 2 for 7, no one's going to throw a parade for that. They shouldn't. But the defensive piece, you know, it's actually gone back to his performance, I thought, against Illinois at home. I thought he was solid defensively at Purdue. But what do we remember from those games? He didn't score. And I understand, right? Tamar Bates is known as a scorer, and he's got to help Indiana from a points standpoint. Now, just be fully on, he scored 4 at home against Illinois, but the defensive improvements have been there over the course of the last couple of weeks. And it really hit the jackpot yesterday, where he was helping you add points to the scoreboard when he hit a couple threes. He helped you remove points from Michigan with the defense that he played. And I'm ready to ride it. I'm ready to play the lottery. I don't know if that's too much of an exaggeration. I'm ready to see Tamar Bates get 18 plus minutes, to find that role for him. Make sure he's aware that he's not playing for a job. He's not playing for additional minutes. He's not playing to prove himself. The conversation has to happen, right? This is where the double bye really helps IU.
Yeah.
Take him aside this week. Compliment him for how he played against Michigan. And now make it clear, look, without X and without giving minutes to Leal or Gunn the rest of the way. Tamar, you're getting 18 minutes. You don't have to worry about proving yourself. Just play sensible, smart basketball on both ends of the court. And when those 3-pointers are there, let them fly. Indiana needs another perimeter threat. Can't just be Miller Kopp or Jalen Hood-Schifino on the occasion or Trey Galloway on the occasion. An extra 3-point shooter is going to be helpful because I agree with what you said earlier, Matt. College basketball is a game of runs, and Tamar Bates is someone who can absolutely ignite that. Now, I'm going to ask you the same question, Charlie, but related to Malik Reneau. I mean, we saw him yesterday contribute on both ends of the court here. He scored 4 points. He was a physical force in the rebounding department. He blocked a shot. In fact, Reneau scored in double digits against Iowa in a game I'm sure we all would like to forget, but he had 10 points in that game. Reneau is going to have, again, another sort of 12 to 17-minute role for this team, but how critical is he for Indiana down the stretch going forward?
Something that I noticed, it's not really a positive, is that, again, Trayce played 44 minutes for the, minute and a half, 2 minutes he wasn't in the game. Indiana got slaughtered. And this was during the 14-15-2 run that ended the half. That's when I saw Malik. That's when I remember seeing Malik Reneau for the first time in that Michigan game. It was him and Race Thompson down low. Again, granted, there's no Jalen Hood-Schifino in at that time. Both him and Trayce were sitting. That could have contributed to it. But it was sad to watch him on offense. It felt like without Jalen guiding him,
right.
Or I guess Jalen like feeding him, and then Trayce kind of helping him take over with a double team and giving him more of an opportunity to score. It's difficult for him to generate anything down low. He does this spin move that he likes to do all the time and kind of just throw it. It reminds me of Zach Edey, kind of. It's if Zach Edey was like 6'8", 6'9". That's kind of the build that I'm looking at. But I think that he's just underdeveloped, which is the most baseline analysis anybody could give you ever. But I mean, it's true. I just don't see him being a big game changer. I don't think that he's the guy that's going to step up and change the momentum of a game. And like we talked about, going on runs is a big deal. And that can happen with a three or I don't know, a block that turns into a breakaway slam. I don't see him doing either of those. Really, maybe the block turning into a breakaway slam. But again, it's getting down the court. He's not as athletically, or he's not as coordinated as Trayce. It's a very weird give and take that he has. And when he's not with Trayce on the floor, and he's with Race, it seems like neither of them know what to do. So I think going forward, Malik Reneau is going to be extremely important. I'm saying this. He might not be a game changer, but he's going to be a role player as long as he's on the floor with Trayce Jackson-Davis. That's one of the only ways I think he's going to succeed on this basketball team is if Trayce has that double team. I don't know, Miller Kopp pulls somebody out to the corner and Malik Reneau has an ISO or a mismatch down low and can find a way to use that spin move and use his length to kind of finish. I think that's where he strives. And I think going forward, that's what Mike Woodson needs to do with him.
Yeah, I like half agree with that, but I would say I think you're missing one important thing, and I think the most important piece of what Malik Reneau is, and that's he's going to be rest for Race and Trayce down the stretch, right? And I think the most important thing for him is when he comes in. Let's say we beat Maryland, right, in the first game of the Big Ten tournament. When we play that next game, whoever we play, right, his minutes are going to be extremely important, right, because he'll probably have to play solo as a big, right. He'll probably have to play next to Geronimo, who hopefully by the time is healthy, or he'll have to play with Race Thompson because Trayce is going to need minutes rest, right. If he can get a bucket or two and just stay, head above water, right, in those minutes and go out and try to prove something, and show what he can be next year when he's the guy here.
He will be.
that will be, that's his thing, right? Like that's what Woodson should go and take him aside and tell him. He should be like, you're the guy next year, but we need you to be the guy when Trayce isn't on the floor.
Yeah.
In this Big Ten tournament, when you're playing back-to-back games, right?
Yeah.
And then the next day, right? The guy's legs are going to be shot. Their knees are going to hurt. And for literally Trayce Jackson-Davis's back might hurt, right? He's an old man, he's got ARP benefits coming up soon. Renew's going to have to be that guy that comes and steps in. And I know Charlie, alluded a little bit to that, but I thought that should be stressed, right? Because I do think that's very important here in March. It's going to be very important in games like whoever we play in the first round of the NCAA tournament is going to be a team that probably doesn't have a ton of elite bigs, right? He's a guy that can come in and give you 10 out of nowhere. Can give you 10, 12, right? And let Race and Trayce sit a bit, right? And get some rest and be fresh for the final 4 minutes of the game. So he's going to be very important. He's just not, like Charlie said, he's not going to be the guy that comes in and is going to make some game-changing plays.
Yeah,
but he's a guy that definitely can come in with a little bit of a chip under his shoulder and something to prove.
Yeah, no question. And I thought it was also a good point Charlie made. Woodson would probably be best to align Renew's minutes with Jalen Hood-Schifino. And I know it's tough. I know it's tough at times when Hood-Schifino's got foul trouble, but perhaps in those games, that's when you go away from Renew and maybe try Jordan Geronimo or maybe try a smaller lineup, or you lean into Trayce Jackson-Davis more. Obviously, Hood-Schifino and Renew go back to their Montverde days. So it's one thing to get a lot out of Renew here the rest of the way. It's another to maybe put him in the best situations that could help him out. I'm looking forward to seeing that take place. I like the comment you just made there, Matt. Depending on the matchup, what did we see last year down the stretch in tournament play? There were some games where Jordan Geronimo really stepped up and was a major force, especially against Wyoming and even in that St. Mary's game. I know it's a game we like to forget because Indiana was crushed. But even against St. Mary's, Geronimo was a very effective force because that's just the way the matchup worked out. And of course, Geronimo's slightly different player than Renew, but overall point is the same. Depending on the matchup, you may have a guy step up here that you may not expect. Our weekly podcast poll over at the Hoosier Sound talked about Tamar Bates and Race Thompson. And our question was yesterday, both Bates and Thompson stepped up in IU's win. Who's more critical to IU's success the rest of the way? And it's a close one, folks. So if you haven't voted yet, make sure you go do that. Race Thompson has the lead right now. Almost 200 votes have been casted. Poll barely been up. Thompson has a 55-45 lead over Tamar Bates. But as we saw in our mentions there over on the Hoosier Sound, Chris mentions that the answer to that question is yes. That's a cop-out, if you ask me. It's an interesting question, Bates versus Thompson. One-word answer from both of you. Who's more important to IU? Charlie, you go first.
More Bates.
All right, Matt, what about you?
Race Thompson.
I'm going to say Tamar Bates. And I did not think I would be.
You're the biggest Tamar Bates fan.
I did not think I would be in this position 2 days ago.
He is a bit of a Tamar Bates.
The Michigan game changed the narrative for me.
You are a simp for a 3-point.
I did not expect Bates to defend.
You need
Kobe
to understand.
Buffkin.
This guy's favorite IU player ever is Jordy Hulse. He is a simp for 3-pointers.
I love 3-point shooting, and I love when the defensive improvement is there. And I saw it in Tamar Bates, and I know IU fans saw it too. You can't fool them.
Give me the storyline, though, Nathan. Give me Race Thompson injured all year, down to the dumps. IU's second best player, a supposedly glue guy, coming back and coming back in full force to lead Indiana to a Final Four and be that guy that Indiana needs to be, that third option next to Jalen Hood-Schifino. Give it to me!
Hey, look, Race was great yesterday too, no question. I'm just sitting here and just kind of dreaming about Tamar Bates finishing the season strong and becoming a starting guard for Indiana next season. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping to get out of Tamar's season. And then with Xavier Johnson's waiver getting approved, with Gabe Cupps and Ja'Kai Newton getting into the house, and a couple of additions from the transfer portal.
Too many guards.
Now we're talking, baby. That's what I'm looking for.
We've gone full inverse, Charlie. We've gone from having one point guard on the roster, like, I think we might have too many guards.
That's how we roll. And Mike Woodson, man, look, he's been in the NBA forever. He knows the GM role. It's required here. That's becoming more and more a piece of college basketball. So looking forward to seeing what's happening there. Of course, folks, all of you can go over to our Twitter account at the Hoosier Sound and cast your vote. Like I said, it's really close right now. It'll be up for a few more days. So make sure you let your voice heard over on our weekly podcast poll. All right. It's quickly time for a social media shout out before we get into the Big Ten tournament. We just wanted to tip our cap to Indiana women's basketball, right? Over the course of the season, just 3 losses all year. We're talking about 3 really close ones, too. The one earlier in the season to Michigan State that IU avenged during the Big Ten tournament. Buzzer beater loss to Iowa a week ago, about 8 days ago, on that Sunday afternoon game in Iowa City. And then a crazy game in the Big Ten semis against Ohio State on Saturday, where Indiana held a 24-point lead for Ohio State to just press them into fatality. It was unbelievable to watch Indiana having a difficult time with that full court pressure. Ohio State got the win. Iowa ended up winning the Big Ten tournament. End of the day, Indiana's going to clinch that number one seed line in the NCAA tournament. And the great news for IU is that their first 2 games are going to be at home. I would be shocked if Indiana fell off the 1 seed line. I would be shocked if Indiana, didn't bounce back with some fire and some fury in that first weekend, especially in the NCAA tournament. The Hoosiers also, because they played their tournament early, like a lot of major conferences do in the women's game, they now get a week off before Selection Sunday on the same day as the men here on March 12th before tournament action starts around March 16th. Folks, our socials. Make sure you follow us if you have not already. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
Make sure you follow us there. If you have not joined the masses here, we're on the cusp of 8,000 followers on Twitter. You could be that person. Maybe we make a run of 10K before March Madness ends. Just think about that, folks. You could be part of that team if you have not yet already. All right, guys, let's talk about the Big Ten tournament. Indiana clinched that double bye. That is cause for celebration. You get an extra day of rest. The first time Indiana has had that double bye since 2016. It's funny, Indiana, when they get the double bye, they're usually a 1 seed. That happened in 2013 and 2016. Indiana sitting at a 3 in this Big Ten tournament. They will be playing in prime time in the 4th window of the Big Ten tournament on Friday night, close to a 9 p.m. Eastern start, depending on how the previous game goes. The Hoosiers will take on either the Maryland Terrapins, Nebraska Cornhuskers, or the Minnesota Golden Gophers on that Friday night matchup. According to DraftKings Sportsbook, the Hoosiers had the second best odds to win the whole darn thing. They're at plus 550 right now. Purdue's the favorite at around plus 150. Indiana, Matt, ended up getting a pretty favorable draw. That's how I see it. Do you see it the same way? Or do you think Maryland and Northwestern, who's the 2 seed in the same part of the bracket, will really pose problems for Indiana?
I see it as a fantastic opportunity for IU to dismiss some of the claims about who they've been this season. That's what I do. That's what I see it as. Again, the Northwestern's a team that swept Indiana this year. It's hard to sweep a team 3 times, so that's in favor of the Hoosiers. Maryland swept Indiana this year in the only meeting that they had. The one game, which they had to play at Maryland, of course, where Maryland are the Harlem Globetrotters, and not Maryland on the road, who become Minnesota. So I see it as a chance for IU to kind of dispel some of the worries. But to me, if I had to choose, right, one, Maryland, we could end up playing Nebraska, by the way. Nebraska's playing playing Minnesota in the first game on Tuesday.
And they'll be on Wednesday, and they'll be favored.
Wednesday, and they will be favored. And then they go and play Maryland on Thursday. Maryland doesn't play well on the road. It's a neutral site game.
Yep.
And Nebraska has won, I think, 6 of the last 8 Big Ten games.
They're really playing well.
They are playing really well. They just beat Iowa in Iowa, and Indiana fans know how, and ask Michigan fans, State fans as well, how hard it is to do that, to go to Iowa City and beat the Hawkeyes. And they found something in playing the coach's son, which I feel like is like quite the inverse of Michigan, right? Where Michigan is playing worse by playing the coach's son. They've started playing Hoiberg more, and they've actually started excelling. On the court. They are really fun to watch offensively, and Kisei Tominaga. I would not be entirely surprised if Nebraska goes on and beats Maryland. But we're going to assume that the favorite wins and that Indiana's playing Maryland in this game. Maryland has one of the best starting fives in the Big Ten, maybe the best overall starting five, I would say, in the Big Ten, or at least the most balanced. You have Jameer Young, who I think is probably the best. I mean, it's hard to say best point guard, but I think he's probably the best overall point guard playing right now in the league. You have Hakeem Hart and
Julian Reese is dangerous.
Julian Reese is dangerous. Dante Scott's dangerous. They play some players that just give you fits. Carey is not like a standout, but he's a big guard.
Yep.
Like overall, they have a good team composition, right? Which is very rare to find in the Big Ten. In the Big Ten, you have to go around to all these rosters. You can find the hole pretty easily. Purdue, it's young guards. Illinois, it's no point guard. Michigan, it's a lack of a power forward and a small forward and Jet that just decides he wants to kill the game single-handedly.
Terrence Williams.
They have Terrence Williams, but they don't have a standout power forward. You go around all these rosters. I give you, Rutgers, for example, is missing Mag. All these rosters have a hole. Maryland's starting five doesn't necessarily have a hole in it. And I've been told by a lot of other people, and I've listened to podcasts about Indiana, Indiana's a team that's really good at, if your weaknesses are Indiana's strength, they're going to take advantage. And if you have a good overall team, Indiana's going to struggle, right? This is a game where Indiana can go in March and dispel those rumors, right? And show that they can beat a good overall team and they can play to their strengths regardless of, being at a deficit, Maryland having a senior guard and having a true point guard, right? And having wings, right? That Indiana struggles against to guard, right? They can go out in this game and kind of dispel those claims about Indiana being struggling against overall teams. So that's the opportunity. Do I see them doing that? Not necessarily. I think this is actually, I would, in my opinion, the tougher of the two games. If they get past this game, I see them in the championship game. I think they'll probably beat Northwestern, given the fact that teams don't beat teams three times, very rarely. And both those games were close, even, right? In both those matchups. So again, it'll probably be a third close game in that game. But if Indiana can go and split the series 1-1 with Maryland, I think they will make the title game. And then that's a crapshoot about whoever they will meet in that game.
Well, favorites Purdue. That would be fun, right?
I highly doubt Purdue makes it there.
Okay,
by the way.
All right.
I highly doubt that.
We'll see.
Yes.
Purdue has struggled as of late. I'm not sure.
They've lost 4 of the last 8.
Yeah.
And they have to go against Iowa and Michigan, or one of Iowa or Michigan State to get there. I don't think they beat either of those teams.
I do like your point, Matt, about how this first game will be tougher. Of course, the common perception would be, hey, look, Indiana's going to have like a 4-day rest advantage over that team they play on Friday because, of course, either the Maryland or Nebraska or whoever, they would play the day before. But those teams are real feisty. And Nebraska, especially, if they get that win over Maryland, they're going to play with absolutely nothing to lose. And that's always a dangerous team to face. Charlie, my question to you here, as far as the Big Ten tournament is concerned, is what exemplifies success for Indiana here this coming weekend? Do you have to win it in order to consider this week a success? Do you have to avoid injury? Do you have to unleash something more out of Tamar Bates, as we saw yesterday, or Malik Renew, or Race Thompson? Is there one particular player you're paying attention to? What measures success for Indiana this coming week?
Winning one game and having a second close one, I think would suffice. You've got a spot in the NCAA tournament. You don't need to. I mean,
you're in, but
Mike Woodson, honestly, he's not going to play it smart. I know he's going to coach with passion,
pedal to the metal,
being practical, which is dangerous because he's going to treat this like he's going to treat in NCAA Final Four matchup. And that's all right. That's what you want if you're an IU fan. You want a banner. But with the past couple of weeks, you've had some scares with injuries. You're heading up against, a long, hopefully long tournament for the Hoosiers, that NCAA tournament.
Yes.
I think that winning one game should be fine for Indiana, and then again losing on some BS call you can blame on the refs or something
Against Northwestern?
yeah, against Northwestern, and they just walk away. I think they'll be fine. In terms of players, I really want to see if Trayce Thompson is fully back. Like Matt says, he's this is him. This is the comeback story. I want to see if this is the real deal. This is the race that we missed, because it could have been the adrenaline from senior night, and the fact that the matchups he had were in his favor. Even though I don't really think they were. He was working his butt off. But I do want to see if Trayce Thompson continues on this little run he's got going. Because again, Michigan was one game. We watched Tamar struggle in a couple games and then show up in a couple games. So we kind of have a bigger picture of Tamar, even though it might be less consistent than our image of Trayce. But I'm really looking for Trayce Thompson to step up in not necessarily the way he did against Michigan, but in a role that he gives energy to the team. That's what I want. That's what I want to see. And then I want to see Tamar Bates. Everybody wants to see Tamar Bates kind of step up and take advantage of the perimeter when he has the chance, because he's a good shooter. I think he just gets nervous after missing 2 threes and stops, which is honestly what you should do if you're playing it for 25, 30 minutes. You don't want to get a cold streak. When you're Tamar Bates and you're playing maybe 15, 16 minutes, I think you take as many shots as you can. Try to get hot because you only have a limited amount of minutes on the floor. So I'm looking for Tamar Bates to really step up in terms of volume when shooting. I want to see him shooting, not everything, not everywhere, but I do want to see him shooting more from the perimeter when he's open, even when he's contested, because when he's confident and when he's feeling it, it's easy to tell that everybody else is feeling the same way. And that's where you go on those 20-5 runs at the end of games. So those are 2 things I'm looking for.
Looking forward to it. Matt, how about you? What's success for Indiana this week at the Big Ten tournament?
That's a tough question because, like,
I agree. I think it is a tough question.
It's a really tough question.
I thought Charlie articulated really well.
Because, like, yeah. Charlie already articulated it, but like, no, seriously, it is. I think success is winning the championship game. I think, and here's why I say that. Woodson laid out their goal to go there and hang a banner and win a Big Ten championship. That would be successful. I think there's a passing grade for the Big Ten, which is to win a game, maybe even make the championship game. I think it'd be disappointing to lose, but I think it'd also be good for the team, right, to make a championship game and also kind of light a fire under their butts before the tournament starts, right? And they'll get the much needed rest for those Thursday or whatever Friday game that they will play. I also think it would be a passing grade if they go out in the first game. I'm not gonna lie to you, because as much as people want to say oh, you set the tournament and winning the tournament and you go out in the first game, I'm not gonna lie to you, this team needs the rest, and they need to be fully ready. And if they go out and Maryland just shoots the heck out of the ball and it's not really Indiana's fault and Maryland goes and actually just wins that game, right, and earns it, I'm not really that upset, right? I'm genuinely not, because again, Indiana will come back and be fully ready for a Thursday game or a Friday game, where they're going to be a 4 or 5 seed and they're going to have those extra 2-3 days of rest where they would have been playing and extra minutes on guys and extra opportunities for them to get injured. right? And being able to have that full team in March, because last year we didn't get that, right? And I want to see Trayce Jackson-Davis in a March Madness game where he isn't fatigued, right?
Yeah.
And if that means losing to Maryland in a close one, I'm willing to sacrifice that. I mean, it would be a success, but I also don't think it would be the end of the world, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. My goals have shifted honestly over the last couple of days. So I would say overarching, do whatever you can to make sure you are at full strength as much as you can going into March Madness. So like,
Yeah.
I fully believe it would be an absolute disaster if Indiana suffers even a minor injury to any of the 7 key rotation players. I wouldn't include Caleb Banks as far as like a key rotation piece yet, but in that mix of Hood Schifino, Jackson-Davis, Renew, Galloway, Kopp, Bates, and Thompson, I not even a minor injury. Okay, so you got to get out clean like you did against Iowa and like you did against Michigan. Now, with that said, over the last couple of days, things have kind of changed because I've taken an eye on some of these smaller conference tournaments. And I'm very, very afraid of some of these auto bid champs out of conferences that are going to end up having teams as 12 seeds. And you look at a team like Oral Roberts, or you look at a team like Drake, or potentially VCU out of the Atlantic 10. I want nothing to do with facing those teams in a 5-12 matchup in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Nothing. Now, if you go down one seed line lower, I think you have 13 seeds that are easier matchups for Indiana that pose much less of a threat, where Indiana will be more of a 9-10 point favorite rather than a 5 or a 6 point favorite. And I'm talking about those 13 seeds down to like Utah Valley, Louisiana Lafayette, Iona. Those teams will have interesting threats, and Rick Pitino obviously coaches the Iona Gales, and that'll be an interesting matchup if that's what comes down the chute. But what I want to emphasize is some of those elite auto bid teams that could land on the 12, I want nothing to do with out of Indiana as a 5. So if that means you beat Maryland, to ensure that you stay on the 4, because what happens, right? You see some of these other teams at the 4. Xavier could win the Big East tournament. Virginia could win the ACC tournament. UConn could win the Big East tournament. Gonzaga is obviously going to be, they are favored to win the West Coast tournament. If Indiana's not going to fall to a 5, I'm good. So my overarching goal is do what you have to do here to land on the 4 line and play one of those weaker auto bid teams that come in as a 13 seed rather than some of the more dynamic ones as 12. Now, I will say, I just talked a lot and complimented Oral Roberts. I do see that they're down right now in the semis of their tournament against St. Thomas. So, hey, if Oral Roberts gets knocked out, I'm all good with it, even though they're a very exciting team to watch. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up here on this Monday night. So much to digest as far as Indiana basketball. So much happening. Indiana gets the senior night win. There's a lot to look forward to now, but fortunately, some extended rest with that double bye. Charlie, as we wind down on this March 6th, what are your final thoughts as we wrap up?
I think that first I want to congratulate the seniors for a heck of a game. That was awesome. Senior night was super cool to watch. Secondly, Mike Woodson is just as passionate as the next person, even more so when it comes to this Big Ten tournament. So I think as an IU fan, every IU fan should be excited to see what he has, what tricks he's going to pull out of the hat, because I think it's going to be an IU team that has energy, that has been working towards this goal the entire season. Honestly, I think the NCAA tournament is a shadow for these guys right now. This is about the culture at Indiana. This is about the culture of the Big Ten. And this is about the culture of Mike Woodson's reign as the leader of this IU basketball team. So I think this is super important to him. I know it's important to him. I know it's important to the guys, and it's super important to Hoosier Nation. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no kidding about that. I just see the comments from the people that follow us at Indiana HQ, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. Everyone's locked in right now. You can't fool IU fans, that's for sure. Matt, how about you? Your final thoughts here on this Monday night?
I'm so happy that Trayce Jackson-Davis
Yeah.
came back for these last 2 years, and we got to see more of him. I'm happy that Race Thompson decided to join this program under Archie Miller and decided to stick with it instead of going to Minnesota. I'm happy that Michael Shipp and the other
Nate Childress, yeah.
Nate Childress and the other walk on whose name
it was the two. It was just the two that were honored yesterday, Shipp and Childress. Chili.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then Miller Kopp decided to train. I'm happy that these guys were genuinely these guys are part of the program. Like, they're good members of Hoosier Nation. They'll be great, family members, I guess, of the alumni of Indiana basketball. And to send an all-time great out in Trayce Jackson-Davis with at least, a Sweet 16 would be nice, right? That's all I ask for. And some really just some classic March Madness moments down the stretch here. Heck, I'd be okay with a Big Ten title, Indiana's first Big Ten title coming in Trayce Jackson-Davis last year. That would be pretty storybook. We'll see if the team could put together a couple games here to make that run. They'll take a lot. But I'm genuinely, like, taking a step back. Like, he's been a special player to watch. He's been a joy to watch. He's been so much fun, and he's also just been such a gracious athlete in the way he carries himself, the way he interacts with fans and other players from other teams, and he's fun. So it's been nice having a fun player after all these years of Indiana being mid. It's been nice to have a couple really nice players in that term, and it's nice that the program kind of seems to be taking a turn for the better with Mike Woodson in the helm.
Yeah, no question. Blue chipper, no question about that. For me, looking back over the 31 regular season games, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. Indiana's obviously they've banked some positive moments and some positive memories. Going 6-0 against Purdue, Michigan, and Illinois, a stat that, by the way, we tweeted out, and they tried, Patrick Young tried to bring it up on the field at 68 and stumbled over it. But that's fine. It's okay. We're not upset. Indiana, of course, sweeping Purdue, Michigan, and Illinois, 6-0, that is, for the first time since 92-93. So positive memories, positive moments, great victories. But when it's all said and done, when you ask the question, what exactly has Indiana accomplished this season? The answer is they're a 4 seed in the March Madness, and they're like top 4 in the Big Ten, and that doesn't exactly move the needle at Indiana. All right, and what's interesting is now you have a Big Ten tournament where you can announce yourself, and you got the NCAA tournament where that round of 64 and the round of 32 and the Sweet 16, that is jackpot time. And those games are going to define what happens with this program in the offseason. And they may not win their first game, but as Matt pointed out earlier, this team could potentially make a run into the second or third weekend. I don't know. Just gonna have to buckle up,
guys.
Gonna have to buckle up and find out. We'll be with you every step of the way. That about wraps it up for our 288th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.